This is Right to Life Radio with John Girardi on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400, a production of the Right to Life of Central California. And now, here's your host, John Girardi.
It's the first Saturday of the month, and as we do every first Saturday of the month, we at Right to Life are joined by Right to Life's own Linda Talia. Linda Talia is our lead sidewalk counselor, advocate person out on the sidewalk in front of Planned Parenthood, and this is our Stories from the Sidewalk segment. And this week, you came in sort of saying, I'm not sure how to be positive about it this week, and it's kind of a bummer. But I still think this could be interesting, right? In spite of the fact that it's a bummer, I think it's important to talk about the ups as well as the downs with our work out on the sidewalk. And so, Linda, I want to kind of give you space to sort of talk about just the individual things you've been experiencing out there, that it's not always sunshines and rainbows, that it's a very hard reality of abortion in this city and in this state, that you know, there are a lot of conditions on the ground that lead to a lot of women choosing abortion. So maybe you could share some of the stuff you've been experiencing out there the last couple of weeks.
Okay. So let me get a little closer to the mic.
There you go.
I'm really having a hard time thinking of something to inspire with. So I'll just be truthful.
Yeah.
Last week, I probably talked to 4 people who just said, I'm having an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to do.
Right.
It doesn't even matter because this is what I'm going to do because this works for me. And 2 of the 4 were men just saying, well, it's what she wants to do. I can't really do anything. It's so frustrating because
there's a lot you can do, buddy. But yeah.
I mean, and I try to give them tools. I'm like, okay, what do you guys need?
Yeah.
We have every base covered now. We have places where you can get clothing, places where you can get food, places where you can get shelter. Our organization does a baby shower. We did a birthday party. We did a maternity drive.
We'll find you a job.
We'll find you a job. We have Obria where you can go and get free medical care, and all these women just waiting to help.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them this kind of stuff. And then I tell them about the men that come by later in their 50s and 60s and say, I wish I would have been more of a man.
Yeah.
I wish I would have stood up. I wish I would have known. And
yeah, and I think it's sort of, you know, especially with your work, that, you know, I think you do a pretty decent job of getting as much emotionally disconnected from it as you can, because otherwise you'd go completely nuts. But it is a thing of, I think it does open up the opportunity for us to talk about the specific, I think, conditions in the San Joaquin Valley that I think do make it kind of a hotbed for abortion. And it's a couple of things that I'm sure you've noticed, and I notice, you know, leading Obria now. And so there are probably different aspects of this. So I think some of the main things I want to focus on are insurance coverage. So one of the things we see all the time with Obria is that there are a lot of women who have Medi-Cal, a lot of women who qualify for Medi-Cal have Medi-Cal. But for actual OB care, like actually for actually having a doctor who will take you in, see you for all your OB visits, and deliver your baby, the options that women have are really, really small. There just aren't very many healthcare providers in the San Joaquin Valley that want to take Medi-Cal patients. And so what you find is that a lot of women just don't have good access to prenatal care. Now, I don't know what maybe you've experienced as far as that goes in your interactions with women, where a lot of these women think like the only place to go for prenatal care is Planned Parenthood. But I think that kind of contributes to that sense that these women have, that like the only place to go is Planned Parenthood.
I think it's even before that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they think that Planned Parenthood is the only place they can go for OB care. It's that they think it's the only place they can go for women's quote unquote health care.
More broadly.
They really think this is it. And as soon as they walk in the door, they're in a quote unquote safe haven that isn't really safe, because their agenda is to sell abortion. And I talk about that all the time to both the men and the women. you know, there are other healthcare centers. There's Obria, but that we also have federally qualified healthcare centers. Those
yeah.
are available. Nobody knows about them, so we are talking about those.
Right.
And they don't know about this stuff. And I tell them, look,
This is not the only
Planned
place you can
Parenthood
go.
sells abortion.
Right.
That's what they do.
Right. Well, and even it's a thing where people might hear you say that and think, oh, she's just spewing, right-wing
Yeah.
pro-life propaganda. It's like, no, take it from someone who runs a nonprofit prenatal/reproductive health care clinic like I do. There is only one service that Planned Parenthood does that bills worth a damn, and it's abortion. So the idea that, I mean, what you're saying is 100% right. The only reason they can stay afloat is because they do abortion. Even though Planned Parenthood likes to trot out that stat of like, abortion is only 3% of all the services we do. Well, BS. It's of all of the services they do, the single biggest revenue generator is abortion, and that's why all of their clinics do either surgical or
well, if
chemical
you
abortion.
go on their weekly newsletter, they're now talking about how many abortions they're doing for out-of-state patients. So they're accidentally kind of
they're letting
stabbing
their
themselves
cards.
in the
Yeah.
back. So
Oh,
that makes me think of one of the things that I tried to use as a descriptive model for people going in there. I'll say, so just think of it this way. They'll say, oh, I'm just going in there for STI testing, or I just want to get birth control or whatever. And I'll say, let me just put something out here. So when you go to McDonald's and they are selling you that $1 Coke,
Right.
do you think that's really what they're selling you?
Sure.
And they'll sit there and I'm like, no.
No, they're selling you the $9 meal that
The
you'll
burger,
eventually get later. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'll say, okay, so Planned Parenthood is doing what? They're gonna give you your free birth control, but when you have
as a loss leader.
yeah,
Yeah.
This is so. Whenever you think of crisis, because they're there for you in crisis, you're gonna go there for their moneymaker, their burger.
Sure. Well, and especially
Then the lights go on.
Yeah. Well, and especially given that, I mean, condoms, even when used 100% perfectly, 100% of the time, will fail 1% of the time. Birth control, even when used 100% perfectly, 100% of the time, will fail at least 1% of the time. Knowing human nature, people will not use those things 100% perfectly. So it's almost in a way, through the public health perspective they have, not of sexual risk avoidance, but of sexual risk reduction. They're setting themselves up, especially through their work in public schools and with high school kids and stuff. They're setting up their own future business. I mean, that and so
they really are.
Yeah. So between their, but and people fail to see that, like, whether this is a conscious business model decision or not, this is obviously how they're financially incentivized. They're incentivized to push abortion on you.
It's working.
And it works, yeah. And people genuinely have this sense that it's the only place. So, I mean, and Valley Children's has said this, St. Agnes has said this. There is a dearth of available prenatal care options in the San Joaquin Valley. Planned Parenthood poses itself as like, oh, we're providing prenatal care, even though they're really providing birth control care. They're not actually providing much in the way of prenatal visits. Like some of their clinics do, some of the clinics don't. But it's obviously not a big focus of what they do. And
they try to make it a focus, but it's not how they keep the doors open.
Well, sure. Yeah, it can never truly be a focus. And when you see, especially like Planned Parenthood has their annual report that they do every year where they sort of chart all their services. And it's basically all of their non-abortion services go down, 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 and their abortion services go up, 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 up as far as revenue generated. Yep. So I think all of those circumstances combine to make it such that, like the San Joaquin Valley is a classic place for abortion to be really, really high. Like between abortion correlates strongly with lack of access to quality prenatal care. Abortion correlates strongly with poverty. Abortion correlates strongly with people who don't have insurance. Abortion correlates strongly with all these various kinds of social factors. And that's, unfortunately, I think, that's why I think Planned Parenthood's trying to open an abortion clinic in Visalia. Because I think they see the San Joaquin Valley as a perfect place for planting abortion clinics.
And, I always say that I don't have anything against the people who actually work at Planned Parenthood because they're, a lot of them are probably nice people. They just know that in order to keep their jobs, keep the doors open, they have to do what they have to do.
Right.
And I have to tell you today, one of the reasons for one person considering getting an abortion was, she was, drunk and she doesn't know how that will affect the baby. And I said, are you kidding me?
Jeez Louise.
How do you think most people get pregnant? Where do you think it starts? And then he started laughing.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, yeah.
There are a lot of children who begin their world as mom drinking one
I mean, if that
one
was
glass
true
of wine
all the time,
like it's not like you have alcohol poisoning anyway. But I mean, it does speak to just the lack of information that these people have, and if they're going to and if they're saying that to you, they've probably said it to the Planned Parenthood employee who's sitting there nodding at, like nodding at them like that's at all a rational thing. That's so absurd. Jeez Louise. But yeah, and that's the sad I mean, it's a thing for us to be aware of, and that's why, what was the big motivating factor behind us at Right to Life getting Obria off the ground? It was, these are the conditions at play. There's a huge need in this city for better prenatal care, and because of that gap, because of the way Planned Parenthood has very successfully inserted itself, whether it be in Fresno Unified School District, whether wherever.
We just needed a
they have great
pro-life
PR.
clinic.
Yeah. Well, we need a clinic that is genuinely going to serve lower income people and genuinely give them prenatal care, not a couple prenatal checkups, but mostly what we're here for, mostly financially what we're incentivized to be here. And to give them, I mean, that's one of the things when people criticize Obria. Well, why aren't you giving out, this? Why aren't you giving out that? It's like, okay, well, we do. And it's one of the things why I don't even like defining our Obria clinic sort of in opposition to Planned Parenthood. I sort of say, well, this is the range of services we do. We're about helping women to say yes to life. We're about helping women choose life. This is the range of services we do. We don't do these other services. We also don't do oil changes. I mean, this is what we do. So to have, and it always annoys me that, when Planned Parenthood's funding is threatened, people are yell and scream about, oh, you're taking away money from women's healthcare. No. You're taking away money from this one select range of women's healthcare services. And that's a very different thing.
That's
so
true.
Anyway, Linda, I appreciate you coming on to share the good and the bad. Keep up the good work.
Better.
Maybe next month better. I sure hope so. Linda Talio from Right to Life Central California with us for Stories from the Sidewalk. Thank you, Linda. All right, when we return, we will have more here on Right to Life Radio. Stay tuned. John Girardi with you. Right to Life Radio, thank you all so much. The best music in the greater Fresno area radio market, some say the world. All right, I want to talk about a piece of legislation that died in the California State Legislature this past Saturday. Jonathan and I had talked about it a bit. Jonathan not able to be with us this week. AB 1400. AB 1400 was a bill to establish CalCare, so a single-payer California health insurance healthcare system. This would have been a really monumental piece of legislation, whether you support it or not. And our perspective on it at Right to Life Central California was, I mean, generally speaking, we're a pro-life organization. We're not an insurance organization or a healthcare or structure organization. However, to the extent that a single-payer California healthcare system would completely cover all abortion, which I'm sure this bill would have done, this was something that we opposed, was the idea of 100% coverage of abortion. Now, we are required by law to have 100% coverage of abortion under our current regime of California law. Insurance companies in California, our private insurance plans all have to cover abortion. Medi-Cal has to cover abortion. So in a sense, I mean, it's not, maybe it would have been, 50 cents the one, six of the one, half a dozen of the other. Maybe it would not have made that much of a difference exactly. However, it does raise other questions about, do we trust this state government to administer a government healthcare system? This state government with this kind of anthropology regarding the dignity and sanctity of human life would basically would be making decisions about healthcare rationing. Would they promote, cheap physician-assisted suicide over and above, say, more expensive forms of palliative care or end-of-life care? I think those are all very, very good questions. Would CalCare cover physician-assisted suicide? There were all kinds of problems with this legislation. Now, from a totally outside of the abortion and life issues perspective, a lot of people had different kinds of objections and arguments, for and against this bill. It would have been the most significant tax increase maybe in California history if this bill was adopted. It would have cost something like $130 billion to fund. There are questions of, well, can the state of California, which lately had, $30 billion stolen just from its unemployment division, can the state of California effectively manage all healthcare in the state? So a lot of objections were made, but then a lot of people are saying, look, the healthcare system as currently constructed has lots of wasted money, lots of inefficiencies, a lot of expense. Insurance companies are no angels or anything. Maybe a government-run system would be better. Regardless of all these arguments, AB 1400 died earlier this week as on Monday, the California State Assembly was poised to vote on it, and the author of the bill, Assemblymember Ash Kalra from San Jose, he pulled the bill from consideration. Basically, he did not allow the Assembly to vote on it. And I was very surprised at this. He said he thought that it would lose. The bill had sailed through all the different committees in the California State Assembly, so when a bill is introduced, it has to go through a couple of assemblies that deal with its subject matter. So for a healthcare bill like this, the Assembly Health Committee had to approve it, this committee. The Assembly Appropriations Committee approved it without any debate on a pure party line vote, 11-3, with no debate, no discussion on a bill that would have spent more money than any piece of legislation possibly ever. So, which leads you to wonder, what is the point of an appropriations committee if they're not even going to debate it? Regardless of all that, the author of the bill pulled it from its consideration on the floor of the California State Assembly. And he did this because he thought the bill would lose and that it might even lose by double digits. So that's kind of astounding given that Democrats in the California State Assembly have 60 of the 80 votes. So if he thought it would lose, that means he thought there were as many as 25 Democrats who would vote against it, along with the 19 Republicans and the one independent, which to me is astonishing. And I guess it goes to show that insurance companies have a lot of strength, even in the California State Legislature. So, I mean, from a pro-life perspective, I'm not sure how exactly to think about it. It's not like our current regime with insurance and private insurance companies being mandated to cover abortion, whether that's really any better or worse than a single-payer California healthcare system that covers abortion. Obviously, we don't necessarily take a position on, socialized medicine or anything like that, but other than, to ask, well, who's making the decisions about when people need care and when they don't need care? So anyway, AB 1400 goes down in flames. It does not seem like that is going to come back. When we return, there's a newly confirmed director of the FDA and how guys like Mitt Romney totally bungled his confirmation process in the United States Senate. I'll explain next on Right to Life Radio, right here on Power Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, I want to talk about the issue that Jonathan and I sort of highlighted as the most important issue of the 2020 election that literally nobody other than us talked about. And that was the question of so-called medication abortion, pill abortion, chemical abortion, RU486, otherwise known as mifeprex or mifepristone. Under formerly existing FDA guidelines, the FDA guidelines that were in place, say, in 2020, abortion pills could only be given to patients in a clinical context. Okay, so you can't just put it, call in the prescription and have the patient pick it up at the drugstore and take it on their own. They had to take abortion pills in a clinic. Now, the abortion pill regime, it's actually a series of 2 pills that a patient takes. The first is RU486, mifeprex, mifepristone. This so-called medication alters the lining of the woman's uterus so that the baby and the baby's food supply can't adhere to the uterine wall, cuts off the baby's food supply, baby dies. The second medication you take is called misoprostol, which induces labor artificially, and the woman expels the baby from her body. So it's kind of a process of artificially creating a miscarriage. The first of those 2 pills you have to take in the clinical context. So you have to actually go to a clinic to have a chemical abortion. And chemical abortion is more and more becoming the norm, especially for early abortions, first trimester abortions, and a greater and greater percentage of American abortions are being done as chemical abortions. And the advantages from the abortion provider's side are obvious. You don't need a doctor. You don't need to do surgery, etc. It's not, most people, when they think of abortion, still think of some kind of surgical event with a doctor, or in California's case, a nurse practitioner midwife. So what happened in the 2020 election? Well, based on the kinds of people Biden was surrounding himself, the kinds of scientific advisors he was surrounding himself with, the urgent calls from the pro-choice side, I knew exactly what was going to happen. Before COVID was ever a thing, and then this got ramped up big time when COVID became a thing, people on the left wanted to get rid of the FDA guidelines on pill abortion in order to allow people to take the abortion pill medication, so-called medication, at home. So you don't have to take it in the context of a clinic. You can take an abortion pill at home, with it not in the clinical context, not with any clinical supervision as you take it. This was being pushed by the left because of their strong ideological desire that abortion be safe, legal, and universally accessible. That's the byword. That's the buzzword on the pro-choice side these days. It's not safe, legal, and rare. They don't want abortion to be rare. They don't care about abortion being rare. They want abortion to be safe, legal, and universally accessible. And if you have to drive to an abortion clinic, that is viewed as an unacceptable hindrance to accessibility. Some people don't have cars. Some people rely on public transportation. Some cities don't have abortion clinics in them. If you get rid of the requirement that abortion pills have to be taken in an abortion clinic, then they could possibly be shipped through the mail. If they can be shipped through the mail, then anyone with a mailbox can have an abortion. That was the desire on the left, and their rationalizations about, a pill abortion is safe. Don't worry about all the statistics. Let's not even keep recording the information that would allow us to see whether or not there are healthcare risks associated with medication abortion. Basically, they came up with their rationalizations after the fact that, pill abortion is safe. Don't worry about it, in order to justify sending it through the mail, because it was this ideological thing. Their ideology is that abortion should be universally accessible. Therefore, it should be sent through the mail rather than accessed at the clinic. So it's kind of the tail wagging the dog here. It's their abortion ideology is making this really what is a healthcare safety regulation. That's the FDA regulation. Their ideology was driving a change in this safety regulation. So I knew in the 2020 election. By the way, I'm not like some prophet or something. I was just reading stuff from Biden's advisors who were going to ultimately be making these decisions. All of the Biden people were saying we need to get rid of this FDA regulation. And the FDA regulation had not changed for 4 years of Trump. So we kind of knew if Trump won, this FDA regulation would stay on the books. If Biden won, this FDA regulation would go away. Of course, Biden won. And immediately the FDA introduced as a temporary rule for the duration of the COVID pandemic, which was sheer nonsense, to allow pill abortion to be taken at home rather than in a clinical context and mailed. So first it was a temporary rule. That rule became permanent. Now, Biden has nominated and is still waiting on the final confirmation of a new commissioner for the FDA. This guy, Robert Califf. And he was kind of a critical person in this whole process. So this is to confirm him as the official long-term head of the FDA. Okay, and it's an appointment that the president makes and the Senate gives its advice and consent. Now, he is a big-time abortion ally. Okay, and I've been inundated with all of these, notifications from various pro-life groups that I am close with, which basically talk about Robert Califf, who used to be the commissioner of the FDA before, and who Biden is now nominating again to be the FDA commissioner. Here's what, for example, the Susan B. Anthony list has to say. Last year, the Biden administration moved to weaken longstanding federal safeguards for patients against mail-order abortion drugs designed to protect women from serious health risks and potential abuse. The Biden administration policy allows for dangerous at-home, do-it-yourself abortions without necessary medical oversight. Biden has also nominated former FDA Commissioner Dr. Robert Califf to resume the role he held under Barack Obama. During his tenure, Califf oversaw the weakening of reporting requirements for complications after chemical abortion, obscuring the real dangers of abortion drugs despite evidence that they are unsafe. So what Califf did during the Obama administration was he basically stopped any kind of reporting on almost any kind of safety problem, health and safety problem, adverse effects from abortion pills. So once he came in he was the FDA commissioner under the Obama administration. He imposes this rule not to collect this dangerous, this safety information about chemical abortion, where, people have been reporting, thousands of people being admitted for hemorrhaging, thousands of people being admitted to the ER, thousands of all these different problems. And basically to promote this idea that, no, chemical abortion's safe. Well, if it's so safe, why did the Obama FDA commissioner refuse to allow the FDA to collect any more information about all the safety risks associated for it? So they say they can then point to the stats. Oh, there's no record of any safety risk. Yeah, because you stopped collecting data on it. That's why it's so safe, because you're refusing to report any of the information of how it's unsafe. So Mitt Romney, now for the FDA commissioner, the president nominates and the Senate confirms. And this is true of a lot of cabinet-level positions within the presidency, that the president nominates someone and the Senate approves it. And generally, the Senate is pretty lenient towards a president who's nominating his people. Look, the guy won the election, so he should have the people that he wants to have staff the administration. That's generally the perspective that the Senate takes to these sorts of things. And only if someone is a really egregiously bad pick, usually will senators raise objections. A lot of Republican senators, for example, voted against Javier Becerra when he was nominated to HHS because, well, Javier Becerra has no public health experience whatsoever. He's just a very aggressive pro-choicer. So the role that Mr. Califf played as the former FDA commissioner in covering up abortion pill safety statistics has led to pro-life organizations saying, you know what, Republicans in the Senate need to vote against this guy. The Senate needs to oppose this guy. And Mitt Romney actually announced that he was going to support this guy. And this has led to a lot of people saying, hey, like, Mitt, what the heck? I mean, Romney spoke virtually to the National March for Life, a week ago. And now here he is voting for this FDA commissioner who is obfuscating all these problems with chemical abortion. And chemical abortion is the single biggest new threat to life that's here. I mean, it's already here. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. I was saying this throughout the 2020 election. Whoever wins that election if Biden won the 2020 election, he then wins the 2020 election, he's going to impose this new regulation allowing abortion pills to be shipped through the mail. I don't think we as a pro-life movement really fully understand just how radically paradigm shifting this one regulatory change is. Because abortion then is no longer a thing that you go to a clinic to do. Abortion can simply become a thing that you go on your phone to get. You get your phone, you download a Planned Parenthood app, you're chatting with a Planned Parenthood nurse practitioner through like a text message looking app on your phone, you get a prescription for abortion pills, you get abortion pills shipped to your house. Bada bang, bada bang, bada boom. As easy as Amazon Prime. That's the future of abortion. The future of abortion is right here as I wildly hold up my cell phone to the microphone. This is the future abortion clinic right here. They won't need brick and mortar clinics. They'll have phones. Now, some states are doing their part to stop this. For example, South Dakota just passed a law preventing abortion pills from being shipped in the mail. But not every state's going to do this. And so for Senate, now I don't know if Senator Romney has taken a final position necessarily. He's getting a lot of pressure to change his position. I certainly hope people like Mitt Romney don't, say one thing at the March for Life and then do another thing. I mean, look, people are, personnel is policy. And for people to take this perspective, well, he's the FDA director. I mean, well, I guess the president needs to get his own FDA. No, this guy actively worked in the Obama administration to obfuscate the health risks of pill abortion. That's pretty egregious. And Republicans in the Senate shouldn't be just saying, well, the president should get the team he wants, No, not for something egregious like this. When we return, how this attitude applied to Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins as we close out the show next on Right to Life Radio. Thank you so much for listening. There's a very interesting piece in the Federalist, I believe it was in the Federalist, written by Megan Basham, who is a new favorite of mine and Jonathan's. I'm pulling up her article here that Jonathan texted me. Jonathan Keller not here today, but still very much here in our hearts as he winds up accidentally kind of shadow producing the show from afar. So So yes, Megan Basham, who writes for Daily Wire, not for the Federalist. She writes for Daily Wire. And she has a whole piece about Francis Collins and how Francis Collins, who is the former director of the National Institutes of Health, and a huge pro-choicer, was appointed as head of the NIH because of his very public positions in favor of embryo-destructive stem cell research, who basically helped to create the marketplace for fetal tissue research, using the body parts of aborted children in research, because he's the head of the NIH. And what the NIH does is it funds research grants to universities. And they basically allowed aborted fetal tissue to be used in research projects that they were funding. So the source of all of those videos that David Daleiden uncovered, where Planned Parenthood was getting the body parts of aborted children and selling them, often it was argued for profit, What was the motivator? What was the source of money at the root of this whole problem? It was Francis Collins' NIH. Anyway, Megan Basham has this whole article about how Francis Collins kind of duped all of these different pro-life evangelical Christian organizations into thinking he was just the greatest guy. And specifically, she sort of focused a bit more on his promotion of various Biden administration favored COVID policies, which are a little bit of less concern for our show. But it's astonishing to me how many people looked at Francis Collins as this like leading light that evangelical Christians should listen to for guidance on whether it was COVID issues or as if he's some kind of politically neutral ally. Jonathan and I were banging the drum on this as early as 2017. January 2017, in the early days of the Trump administration, we were yelling, Trump needs to fire Francis Collins. He's a bad egg. He's a highly pro-choice with a huge influence over federal money being directed towards research projects that utilize the body parts of aborted children. It's wrong. It's not just wrong, it's disastrously evil and immoral. And whether he may subjectively love Jesus or something, but objectively speaking, what he was doing was grievously wrong. And somehow he had ingratiated himself with Republican senators on Capitol Hill. And as a result, Trump never got rid of him. And I'm thinking, especially after COVID, Trump probably rused the fact that he never got rid of him. He never got rid of Anthony Fauci. Fauci actually is a subordinate of Collins's. I think he's under Collins in the org chart within NIH. And it sort of highlights this reality. Personnel is policy. Now, to a certain extent, the president's going to appoint to these various branches of the federal government. He's going to appoint the people he wants because those branches of the federal government exist to do what the president wants within the bounds of law, within the bounds of what they are able to do. They adopt the policies that the president prefers. So a lot of senators take the perspective of, look, if the president's going to appoint someone to be the head of the NIH or to be the head of the FDA, like this Robert Califf guy that we were discussing, if the president's going to appoint someone to these roles, should we fight tooth and nail against it? Well, maybe let's just fight tooth and nail against it if the guy's like, if this person is genuinely incompetent, genuinely lacks the qualifications, or if it is in some way egregious. And I guess what I would say is, look, personnel is policy. Republicans need to kind of understand that. And they need to be a little bit more aggressive, I think, when it comes to the pro-life side of things, that I don't care how nice Francis Collins was to individual Republican senators. He was a bad egg because the policies he promoted were evil. And so anyway, my wish, my hope is that more and more often Republicans will understand that and will take more aggressive action against, the next Republican who becomes president needs to fire every pro-choice holdover from the prior administration. Anyway, keep your friends close as your enemies closer. That's the message from Vito Corleone from The Godfather. Thank you all so much. This has been Right to Life Radio with John Girardi.